MC the session. Greg and I are buddies from childhood, so you guys are in good hands with him. He's just a tremendous guy who cares deeply for this community. So, Kylie, I'm going to let you take it away.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you here, Greg. I'm excited for this next few minutes. Everybody, let me get my life together and we can do a quick introduction. All right, so today here we have Greg Mellinger. He is a seasoned strategist who has helped guide companies through complex transformations and growth initiatives via HighQuest Consulting out of Boston. With decades of experience in aligning strategy, investment, and operations under one roof, Greg knows how to turn vision into action. Today, he's here to share insight on leadership in change-heavy environments, how to drive impact, and how veteran professionals can leverage their backgrounds into strategic roles. Super happy to have you here today to kind of tell us about yourself, Greg.
Thanks so much, Kylie.
Yeah.
Pleasure to be here with you all. Thank you for your time. My career since graduating from the military academy back in '89 has been shaped by my military experiences. So whether it be, just the initial years as a lieutenant and, company level leadership roles, which, was quite the honor to serve in the infantry back then. But, even just every year since, people have always been so curious and engaging in terms of my experiences in the military and how it played a role to this present day. So in maybe a similar way for you as you look for your next career or two or three. I suspect that your amazing experiences will really shape and have great influence on you and others that you work with. But yeah, so as mentioned, I went through the leadership ranks from the get-go at West Point. Went into the infantry after a number of years. I left the service and got into consulting. And it was a startup company, 50 people. Helped to grow it, took it public, did a number of M&A deals while helping the founder to navigate, choppy waters during the 90s. After that experience, left and founded this company that you see this colorful logo, HighQuest Partners. Grew that as a strategy consultancy with an emphasis on mergers and acquisitions. Got involved with agriculture and food in a indirect way. But then it became the focus of the company within about 5 years, and bought a few other companies, publishing firm called Soyatech up in Maine, bought another consultancy, started businesses as, part of HighQuest Partners, sold them, succeeded in certain product and service areas, failed in other products and service areas, and ultimately had an exit 3 years ago with a private equity backed media company. So, have had a variety of experiences and opportunities throughout my career with starting and growing and managing businesses and people, while always just paying attention to what's happening in the marketplace and most importantly, paying attention to how our customers are feeling and what they need and how we could best support them. The customer is always king. So anyway, so that's my professional background. I married, have kids who are now grown and flown, and live up in the Massachusetts area.
Awesome, awesome, Greg. To kind of take us back to the beginning, during your transition, what's something that you remember really struggling with?
Well, I didn't know much about consulting. I didn't know much about at the time I got into the technology field. I did reasonably well at West Point. I was top one third of my class. Certainly not valedictorian or anything like that. And I distinctly remember, that the worst course I ever did was computer science. So here it was joining a technology consulting firm. So I think that the fear of the unknown and just wondering at what point I'm going to feel really confident and competent, in this company and all of that was definitely that lingered, for a couple of years, right? So
Yeah,
and so just I think that transition reality is I don't think is unique to me. I think most professionals feel that way when they're about to jump into another role.
100%. Maybe a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like you're just like, where, how did
Right.
I end up here? Like, what am I doing? I know a lot of us
Exactly.
are feeling like that right now. Tim, what's up? Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for coming to talk to us. You mentioned that you've had several successes, but also a few failures. What industries slash products were your failures in, and what were the biggest lessons learned through that?
Yeah, I think I've been quite interested in mergers and acquisitions. Obviously, I didn't have a classic investment banking background, and where you hone those skills. So I think some of the deals that I did back in the 90s were not particularly uh, clever, nor well structured. I think we paid a premium and made just a lot of assumptions that turned out to be not very valid, right? So I mean, I think there's always um, the great question is, on the one hand, sometimes action is, necessary and it's a good thing, but getting advice up front and especially with a complex endeavor, getting as much input as possible about, what works well, what doesn't work well is really, really important. Okay. Another failure, I had, there was, a period of time when we transitioned from a pure consultancy and HighQuest partners to a much more of a media-based, operation, and the transition was messy, right? So, I mean, it was very difficult to develop skills as we went along, and to put in place the training and the journey and the path that was going to really be realistic, for the tempo that we were attempting to achieve. So, I had a certain period of time in the early teens where a lot of turnover. Okay. Now, when I ended up selling the company 3 years ago, the vast majority of people with the company have been there for 10 years or more. Okay. So, there was a period of probably in the 2009 to 12 period where there was a lot of turnover and turmoil, as we were attempting to do things that, was very sudden and very ambitious. And, so I think that those lessons we ultimately learned the hard way, I would argue. But we did learn those lessons, and that's what resulted in a much more peaceful last 12 or 13 years.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
You're
What do you
welcome.
think's the one biggest thing that you took from those lessons that were forcefully learned?
Well, I think it's extremely powerful to admit that we're not perfect, admit when we're wrong, uh, to be contrite, and to, ask people to, sort of, forgive and to, work with the management team to now move forward, right? So, as CEO and owner, uh, you can sort of fall into a trap of thinking that the emperor has no clothes and that we can do no wrong. But in fact, we're all human, and if you're not experiencing ups and downs, it's just not realistic, right? So, life is filled with ups and downs. So you got to be able to accept it, embrace it, and take those lessons, internalize them, and move on.
Yeah, 100%. That's super important. Um, to go back for what really brought your interest into consulting in the first place? Like what made you want to start your own business and make this a lifetime career? I didn't catch that in your first part.
Well, yeah, I mean, consulting, I tell people today it's sort of being on the wild side, right? It could be extremely lumpy, very much filled with ups and downs, very difficult to predict in terms of revenue streams and all that. So back in the 90s, it was really at it's probably its all-time high. I think consulting and back then was maybe the equivalent of AI today. It was just exploding with growth and opportunity, and it was just a no lose situation, right? So going from the military into a hot young startup, and embracing the idea that I could be a great asset for the company, and learn the business, and participated in a number of ways. It was very exciting, right? I mean, it was very exciting, and it was that was back when I didn't have so many gray hairs. So I mean, obviously, just the energy level was
Yeah.
matched the consulting tempo. So anyway, and then yeah, there I think consulting is filled with the opportunity to explore your curiosities, right? So, a consulting project, has an end date, and has a deliverable, and you really need to master the subject matter and the domain as efficiently as possible, so that you can really generate insights and directions for the client to consider, which you really believe are the right ones, right? So intellectually, it's very stimulating and enjoyable.
Okay. What would you say for somebody in here that might want to go down that same path? Where would be a good place for them to start?
Well, consulting is a massive industry. It could be IT oriented, it could be with testing oriented, it could be strategy consulting, like some of the big entities like McKinsey or Booz or Boston Consulting Group. It could be outsourcing, business process outsourcing. So, I mean, it literally employs, I think in the United States, several million people. And, and by the way, if you want to stay true to your initial experiences with the military, there's hundreds of consultancies that just do things with, defense, right? Or Homeland Security. So, consulting doesn't mean that you need to now learn a whole other sector. You can actually just stay, involved with this. As a matter of fact, some of my, friends, they ended up being, contractors, consultants, for Saudi Arabia or for UAE, and, essentially training their troops, right, in region, right? So consulting is an extremely broad term, right?
Yeah.
And it applies to a huge number of types of consulting businesses. So, if you want to go down the path of MBA and masters and be more, what you might call the white shoe variety of consultant, then that would speak to management consulting and strategy consulting, and it's a phenomenal path right now. Those companies are having enormous success, largely with the AI boom, and just helping every single company that exists to embrace it and figure out how they could succeed in it. If you don't want to go down that path, that's fine. I mean, there's a variety of consultancies where you can function as an analyst and an associate, and someone who crunches numbers or who does primary or secondary research, supplemented by AI, of course. So, I mean, there's really, if you're looking at a particular marketplace or region, and you start looking at some of the job placement sites, I mean, I'm quite sure you're going to come across consultancies, that are looking for people in a variety of roles. And then consultancy does not mean that you only have to be working on projects and being a consultant and being at the client. I mean, a lot of these consultancies are quite large, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, and some are hundreds of thousands of people. So they need operations people, they need technology people, they need finance people, accounting people, et cetera, in order for their firms to operate. Okay,
Yeah.
so it really is there's sort of like the client-facing activity, but then there's the back office, and both of them, there's literally thousands of companies in the United States.
Yeah, I didn't realize how broad it is, how it goes into like all what it sounded like every field. You could do any kind of
Every field.
consulting in every field that exists.
Every field. I mean, even quantum computing, the newest of the new has consultancies now that are dedicated to quantum. So, yes, I mean, if it's a topic that's a legitimate industry, and especially ones that are attracting capital, for investment, you could be sure that there will be consultancies devoted to it.
Huh, okay. Do you see a lot of similarities between the military leadership side and then the kind of leading businesses and consulting?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, consulting is all about, uh, I mean, effectively, there's a project outcome that you're agreeing to deliver for the client. So it's a mission, right? It
Mhm.
has, there's a finite number of resources and people. There's a delivery date. There's what we call a scope of work, SOW. And whether you're an enlisted staff sergeant or a corporal, you're leading a small team or a much bigger organization, or you're an officer. It's all about leadership and accomplishing that goal, that you have. Now, the biggest difference, of course, is that in the military, we're typically not paid any kind of additional compensation based upon the outcome of what we do. And that's a reality of consulting, right? I mean, you have to deliver at a certain level of quality and service level in order for the contract to be honored and paid, right? So I'd say that that's the biggest difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Moving away from consulting a little bit and more into the actually owning a business, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you've learned from starting a business?
Uh, the biggest lesson, I would say the biggest lesson is that you don't have to be the biggest and the fastest growing to be successful and happy.
Mm,
So, there's always a bias that, if you're not growing 15% or more per year and you're not, $100 million a year in revenue, that, it's, I mean, your status in the community is diminished. And that's just malarkey. It's not true. When I set out on my journeys with various companies, uh, and especially with HighQuest, I mean, we never became a medium-sized firm, right? So we were always what's in the trade we call them boutiques, right? So boutique is simply a name for it's a smaller entity. It's a more focused entity, and you can be just as happy and successful as a small entity as you can as an entity that's 10 times bigger. Okay, so
yeah.
I think there's sort of a fallacy with, that, only if you're quite large, and growing at unbelievable rates, does that mean that you're successful? And I think that that's a lesson I've learned, right? And as a matter of fact, not having those types of, stresses means that, the team can be in a little bit more, of a state of equilibrium, of happiness and stability, compared to the pressures of arbitrary growth rates.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. If you're not growing but you guys are doing well, then there's no need to change it. How big is your team? You mentioned you guys were pretty small. How many of there are you at HighQuest?
Well, at the peak of HighQuest, which was actually a dozen years ago, there was about 25. Right? But then the company transitioned to more of an emphasis on the media and events side,
Mm-hmm.
these large scale conferences. So the consulting, over time shrank a bit, whereas the total company grew because of the conferences and media activities. So anyway, so I sold it 3 years ago. I've been a advisor in helping with the transition these past 3 years, and then just my consulting practice is starting to pick up again. So, but we're just three people full time.
Oh wow, awesome. If you could go back, is there anything that you'd do differently starting it up at the beginning?
Me 3 years ago?
Yeah,
Uh, it's well, I spun it out because the company that bought the media and conference business just, they're not a consulting oriented pool of capital. So, they didn't want it. So, I spun
Mhm.
it out because they didn't want it. And also it was going to be a good vehicle for me to do various activities. I was likely to be on boards or advisory committees. So it was a good vehicle to exercise those types of activities. But, now, there's there's more demand by my clients to do more things. So, starting to look at hiring, a new team and expanding that.
Mhm.
But as far as what I would do differently, no, I'd say at the time it was something that I wasn't quite sure if I was going to continue doing the consulting, right? So it was really something as a interim step. But now it's getting a little bit more clear that I might re-emphasize this over the next few years.
Okay. Is there any specific field in consulting right now that's like really booming? It's growing at a rapid rate.
AI and AI testing is booming
Yeah.
and growing at a rapid rate.
Yeah. That's what I thought it was going to be. AI is everywhere right now, so I was just
Yeah,
curious.
yeah. I mean, and if you think about, I mean, my son-in-law is involved with a big AI infrastructure company. I mean, this young man is just super brilliant and technical and all that. I mean, I'm just amazed at what he does and how he does it. But there's not everyone in that field is a genius, right? So and they have very normal jobs, right? I mean, there's people that test just the outcome of the language that's used, right? I mean, there's people that just they're just making sure that everything and that the user experience is professional, it's legal, right? I mean, there's just a lot of roles to make sure that whatever these very technical people do, that what we see and read and experience is something that's acceptable and actually functional. So there's a lot of roles within AI that are far away from the technology side.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about how all company needs all different kinds of people. Like it could be an AI company, but they still need HR and tech people. So it's not always
Yeah,
that one specific field.
recruiters. Yeah, recruiters. I
Yeah.
mean, people in logistics. I mean, just all kinds of all kinds of needs across the board.
Oh yeah, for sure. Are there any huge misconceptions about consulting that you've seen?
Uh, Misconceptions. Well, I would say that there has been a belief that the consultants only flourish when the economy is good. But in fact, the consultants oftentimes flourish even more when the economy is not so good, right? And today's, and I'm not an economist. I mean, it's very, very difficult to put your fingers on the pulse of what's happening in the U.S. economy. I mean, there is a lot of distress out there. It was a record month of layoffs in September. So, but the unemployment rate is low. But anyway, in an environment where there's a lot of upheaval by, management teams and people are laying off, because of AI use, at the same time, companies can be more willing to hire consultants because, they're prohibited from hiring full-time staff, but they're not prohibited from hiring consultants, right? So that's kind of a misconception that often exists.
Yeah. Do you think there's always going to be room for humans in consulting? Like AI isn't gonna, it's not gonna be something that AI is gonna completely take over.
Well, it can't. I mean, yeah, I don't think you would ever have a autonomous consultancy that doesn't have any humans involved. So,
Yeah.
um, uh, but who knows?
I guess that's fair.
Yeah,
We don't know what's gonna be here in 10 years.
right.
I
Yeah.
say, Derek. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I mean, where I spend the most time from a industry perspective is in agriculture, food, timber, sustainability relating to those sectors, something that's called natural capital or it's called impact investing. So, and so you've got a lot of concepts that I'm sure many of you are familiar with on the food and agriculture side, and of course, there's farmland. But when you start talking about the investing side of things, it's a big trend that shows no sign of let up. And there's motivations for investors, financial investors, to get more involved for a variety of reasons, right? I mean, some, of course, would be financial. They're looking for, some kind of dividend every year and payment, and in 7 or 10 years, looking for a much bigger payment when something is sold. But yeah, there's some new dynamics that are at play regarding climate change, right?
Mhm.
And what's called carbon sequestration and carbon credits. So it's actually quite exciting, and there's an incredibly natural fit of agriculturally based assets in investor portfolios for the long haul, for ideally decades, and accomplishing a lot of goals out of that, not just financial return.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Derek, do you have a question?
Hey Greg, Derek Welch here. I just want to introduce myself a little bit and talk about how you were saying basically that consulting can be beneficial during, times of crisis in a sense. Do you feel like people are reaching out to get help in those situations, especially when there's layoffs and stuff like that? So consulting can be more advantageous because people are looking for help, going in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm getting lots of inbound calls right now for for projects that we're bidding on. Yeah, if you think about it, unfortunately, there's a little bit of um, f fire ready aim type of thing, which happens within corporate America. So Amazon will lay off 30,000 people, or Unite Technologies, whatever the company is, they'll just decimate certain entities within their organization, and sometimes it's quite arbitrary, and the managers who are left behind, who are remaining with the company, all of a sudden their resources available to them are just not there, right? And they've got to get certain things done, and so once again, the companies can be very reluctant to add to employee counts, but consultants are much easier to bring on, and they're also much easier to let go, right? So it becomes a more flexible resource base that they can scale up or down as the need, as the business conditions dictate. Does that make sense, Derek?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's interesting to think that consulting could be something that's easier to do when people are hurting. That's so bad to say, but it's kind of true, right?
Yeah. And I mean, it's been very unusual to me, with 9/11, and the aftermath, with the Patriot Act. That was a big stimulus for my company. The financial crisis and, '06, '07, '08 was a big stimulus, for the company. The commodity boom cycle coming to an end in 2013 was a big stimulus for my company. It's very counterintuitive, or at least my experience has been.
Yeah, absolutely. Fred just in the comments just asked, he said he's looking to start his own consulting LLC. Are there any concerns that businesses will just use AI to find solutions or improvements themselves instead of bringing you on?
I mean, every business, every worker out there is being, urged, if not just told, to use AI all the time, right? So
Mhm.
that's just a given, okay? But at the same time, 5 years ago, every worker was being told for productivity reasons, to make sure that they're using all the applications that they can to make themselves more productive and to use, the CRP systems and ERP systems. So, and then, t 10 years ago, anyway, my point is that every 5 years, there's technological revolutions that are taking place, all geared towards productivity enhancement. And, that will never stop, right? In 5 years, it'll be something else. So, does that mean that there's no role for consulting? No, that doesn't mean that, right? Because I mean, it's very difficult for AI to interview management teams, right? And to, synthesize the findings and to, I mean, there's just a lot of things that, us humans do that are quite important and very, very difficult to replace, right? And some of that happens to be just the relationships and trust that we earn and enjoy.
Yeah,
Who,
100%.
who asked that question?
That was, let me see his name, Fred.
Yeah, Fred. Fred, what's your purpose of setting up the consulting LLC? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, I'm just trying to use, the skills we learned and making things efficient. We've been very resource constrained over the years, so I've gotten very good at, maximizing our resources and, improving processes out of necessity because we had to. So I'm looking to do that for like small to medium businesses.
Right. And who
Um,
and who is the we when you say we?
I like the military, Air Force.
Right.
I was running the shop and we've been operating at like 60% manning capacity and budget was very constrained. So we had to find ways just to do things, reduce redundancies and improve processes. So, pardon me, I'm sick right now. So, uh,
It's okay.
but yeah, but that's what I really found a passion doing that. So now I'm looking to start my own LLC to help, you know, different, it's probably looking more at small to medium businesses of all different kinds, just to improve their own processes and teams and everything like that.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean that's a wonderful endeavor, and there will never be, a time when, organizations are perfect and where they don't need that type of help. My only caution to you, I mean, and I'm a small business guy, and I love my fellow entrepreneurs and peers and all that. The only thing you really need to be careful with is that, the smaller companies may have the biggest need, but they have the least ability to pay, right? And so, unless you're doing it as a charitable endeavor, which I'm sure you're not, you're going to have to figure out, what is the size in terms of revenues or, head count, et cetera, where, where they realistically can actually pay your fees, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So,
And I was looking to do more, probably a little bit more volume than short, few week projects instead of multi-year, just to give that flexibility of time for myself and my family, to be able to pick up and drop things as needed or necessary. Maybe one day I'll branch out and grow it, but that's where I just wanted to start at, basically.
Yeah. Well, I applaud your initiative and your entrepreneurship. Welcome to the club. So,
Thank you.
I was totally on mute. It looks like Tim Harrison in here already has a consulting LLC. So Fred, if you want to link up with him, I'm sure he's got some super great input to give you.
Yeah,
Um,
that'd be great.
yeah. Chris, what's up?
Hey, Greg. Actually, you said AI probably a couple dozen times while you've been talking with us. Would you say with the companies trying to figure out how to leverage generative AI and how to make it make sense for their business, that there's probably a huge need for consultants who know how to apply use cases to companies to create value? Like, might be a good niche for at least for the next few coming years if somebody can figure that one out. Over.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I mean, right now it's endless amounts of demand, right? For management teams and owners to reevaluate what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how they can incorporate AI to, make their operation better, stronger, more resilient, lower cost, more competitive, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. Did that answer your question?
No, it was just the discussion was going on. It made me kind of think because a few years ago I'd had the dream of starting up a cybersecurity consultancy just with my experiences and but I was there was some fear and anxiety with it because I've been in the military. I don't have the business, not the business, but the networking and being a known name. So maybe a pivot towards getting more into the new boom of AI might be actually probably a good way to actually make a name and that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I mean, cybersecurity has been hot for decades, and it will always be hot. I think the next the next generation of cybersecurity seems to be incorporating quantum solutions into what is it, the 64-bit keys, whatever, or 128 character
Description, yeah.
keys. I mean, all that is now hackable by, and all these wallets for crypto is now hackable if you have a quantum system that's going at it. So now, the next frontier is going to be the use of quantum to establish, truly random number sets that just can't be hacked. And yeah, so I mean, and in 20 years, we will continue to be talking about cryptos, cybersecurity. So I think that that's a winning field. And I mean, you're probably aware there's hundreds of companies just in the United States, probably thousands around the world that specialize in these areas, and they're always looking for, talent to be part of those organizations. Yeah, and if if you have a better mousetrap, and I'm quite sure that if you have the talents on that side, I'm sure you could be a very sought after subcontractor or independent consultant in that area.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Tim, you're back.
Yeah, so you were just talking about how businesses tend to use consultants because they're easier to hire, easier to let go, that kind of thing. And since it's an a easy to come and go type of revenue stream or whatnot, what other revenue streams do you look at to kind of offset for the downtimes and stuff like that? For if you're let go from a project and there's not something to pick you up right away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the great challenge in consulting organizations is that you want to keep resource utilization, anywhere from 70 to 90%. Okay. So where it can get, sort of uncomfortable is when it dips below 70% and especially, on a prolonged basis. And so what am I talking about? I mean, if there's basically 2,000 workable hours in a year, right? I mean, if you have 70% utilization, that means 1,400 hours, 70% times 2,000 is 1,400 hours. And then you have an hourly rate, right? Is it $100 an hour? Is it 125? Is it $200 an hour? Whatever it is, right? Is it 50 bucks an hour? So you multiply that 1,400 times whatever the hourly rate is that you think the market will bear. And that's sort of perhaps the realistic number. If and hopefully you can budget against that with your family's finances and all that. If it's dipping below in a year, I mean, what do you have to do to get it back up, right? I mean, do you reduce price on certain ones to win more business to get the utilization rate higher, maybe 80%, but at a lower rate to get that same dollar amount? Or do you raise prices because you're not confident you can get more hours, but you can get less amounts of work but at higher price, right? So there's all kinds of nuance in terms of how you plan your family budget and your consulting company budget. But I wouldn't assume ever, unless you're so talented and so in demand, and you're almost guaranteed to be working 1,900 hours a year, right, out of that 2,000, right? And by the way, some of my friends, especially some of my friends have done 2,500 hours a year in obviously they had boom situations and dream clients, and were posted to two or three clients at a time. So it can get sort of extreme, but when it gets extreme, you're working 12, 15 hours a day, right? And 6 days a week. So anyway, there's lots of math that goes into figuring out, what it is that's a reasonable target, and then tracking yourself monthly and quarterly to see, whether or not you're actually likely to achieve that goal that you've set. Does that make sense?
It does. I appreciate it. Yesterday we were just talking about other income streams to kind of offset some of that stuff. So I was just wondering if you did anything else to kind of offset those downtimes and
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons for being fortunate in identifying a consulting company and publisher that made sense for our consulting business, and then going into debt to buy it, and this was back in 2006, was to actually provide that additional revenue stream that you're talking about. Okay, so prior to 2006, 100% of our revenues were just consulting. And as I mentioned, they can be lumpy, up and down, and pretty, dramatically volatile. Okay. So buying this publisher and then getting into conferences was our way of evening out the revenue streams to get away from the lumpiness and to have, two or three types of revenues that we could enjoy throughout a year. Okay. So, but there's other things that people do as well. I mean, consulting is can be very easy to win and to deliver, and it can be very, very difficult. And, some people are really talented, carpenters or electricians or, whatever, car mechanics, right? I mean, some people, if they're not doing consulting, they're sort of just doing a trade, until their next project, gets won or gets booked. So, I mean, if you're a talented day trader with stocks, I mean, that's great for you. But I mean, some of my friends that tried that, I mean, that's even more volatile compared to consulting. So, so be careful. But yeah, I think having a second or third type of activity that you could do, dog walking, I mean, there's so many different things that, can supplement income in case, that utilization rate dips below what you want.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Tim, in the comments, he mentioned he's the one with the consulting LLC. He said one issue that he has is finding people who not wanting a third party to come in and give findings. It sounds like people are a little stuck in their ways, on their processes. Have you dealt with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the client's always right. And so you have to be, you can tell them they're wrong, but you could figure out how to do it in a diplomatic way. But yes, it is hard to affect change. I mean, it's easier to identify things that could be changed than it is to actually get the organization to embrace it and actually make the change. So, I mean, if each person in this line thinks about a time when you had a disagreement with someone and somehow you were able to persuade them to share your point of view. Um, I mean, it feels great, and you kind of feel that okay, it's nice to be right, but it's not easy to do that, is it? Right? I mean, it just seems today that people are very fixed in their beliefs and their ideas, and it's very hard to shift them away from that set of beliefs. So, the same thing holds true in consulting, right? I mean, although I will tell you that um, with the analysis we've done for upcoming investments in agriculture and food sectors, I say that more often than not, we have been more pessimistic about, the nature of the deal and the nature of the combination that was going to result. And to be frank, we chose to just communicate that, right? And to, I mean, not as jerks, but just, here's the reasons why we're not as excited about this situation that you are, right? So the reality is that the client sometimes got a little bit pissy and didn't like what we were saying. And it definitely challenged the big project that they were sort of embracing for their next career move and all that kind of stuff. And I think it actually cost us business, right? But at the end of the day, you have to do what you feel, what your conviction is. And in the short term, it probably cost us money, right? Because they didn't hire us for the next phase with that particular deal. But longer term, they said, well, hey, Greg and HighQuest, they're not cheerleaders, they're consultants. They have to come out on, the direction that they really, or the answer that they feel is the right answer. So yeah, even though they pissed us off, we're going to give them another shot because, we kind of like the fact that they're very impartial and objective, right? So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that answered my question. Hopefully that'll help you out a little, Tim, with the problem that you might be having. People, whenever you're working with people, it can get a little difficult. So,
It's always difficult.
yeah, I'm sure your people skills are amazing. You know how to kind of go around any kind of problems.
Not me, no.
No?
Yeah.
Well, I just have one final question for you. If anybody else has any questions, just raise your hand. But my last question is oh, John has a question. I'll let him go first.
Hi there, Greg. I'm John.
Hey, John.
Hey, so I threw up a question in the chat too. I had to go take a call real quick, so I may have missed this, but I just wanted to, for my own sanity or my own sake, just ask the question. You kind of were talking about like when you talk to the customer, they didn't like what you were having to say. Is there also like some type of like a risk matrix that you would apply to consulting? Like how would you divide, or not divide, but how would you figure out what the risk appetite is for whoever you're consulting for, and then try to apply that to whatever products you would suggest?
I mean, you asked the question.
Okay.
In the exploratory phase of getting to know the client before the project starts, and then at the very beginning of the project, I think you need to really uh, ask very blunt questions about, what is it that what is the organization's risk tolerance, right? And what is it for in all kinds of ways in risk management and operations and technology and financials. And then you really need to ask it on a personal level. What is it that the manager is or executive is trying to achieve, right? And what's something that makes them comfortable with outcomes and what's something that really makes them uncomfortable, right? So I mean, if you don't have a level of communication that's just what I would just term normal, then you run a severe risk of the project getting going sideways, right? So I'd
Yeah.
say the upfront analysis of the situation, you really need to explore areas that might be uncomfortable to you and may even be uncomfortable to the client.
Okay. So there's not like an actual like a heat map that you would apply or a template or something like that.
Well,
It's
yeah, I
just
mean,
a one-way communication with the customer or a two-way.
every project is different, right? So yes, I mean, you should definitely come armed at various points of engagement with the client with, outlines of topics that that represent what they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to avoid, right? So, and you need to cover that, and you need to make sure that you have a thorough understanding of the situation, personally and professionally, so that you're not gonna, I mean, quite frankly, so you're not gonna run into a minefield without a map, right? You need to know that up front.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question, John. Tim.
Hey, so with your involvement now with agriculture, is that more just on the business side, or are you looking to have your own hobby farm in the background, or what? I saw that you're on the board doing some stuff with agriculture for volunteering and that kind of stuff as well. So is that more so just on the side and the business side, or are you also doing that personally?
Right. Yeah. So for more than 20 years, 90% of the consulting activities and projects and 100% of the events and media have been focused in the agricultural and food farming sectors. So, I mean that's my sector, right? So, I mean that's where I've chosen to spend my time and to go deep and to hopefully know enough to be, to add value to conversations. Now, I'm also involved, as an investor into the agricultural sector. So, I'm a kind of food oriented, so I kind of like I kind of like the sector and all that it represents and what it does for humans.
Yeah.
Okay,
Um,
thanks.
Yeah.
Fred asked the question, is there an AI course that you'd recommend to become a SME for various platforms?
I do not have such a recommendation. I think that the options available are unlimited at this point. I mean, I think you can sign up for AI taught courses about AI. I think you can go to the local community college, right? Or the tech, the local tech high school, right? And they're going to have courses of this type. You can go to your, local universities will have them. So, I mean, there's probably thousands of options that you're going to see on Google or Chat GPT if you actually query that.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully I answered your question. Oh, yep, he threw a thumbs up. He's good. Where can everybody find you if they would like to get in contact with you, ask you some questions after this, if you're willing?
Well, come on down to the Boston area. Uh, no, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a large number of connections, and hopefully you all have a LinkedIn, presence or profile. And if if you connect with me and it's obvious that, you're coming from a military background, I mean, I'll happily connect with you, and, you'll enjoy expanded access via LinkedIn just because I have a lot of connections.
Yeah, absolutely. I just dropped your LinkedIn in the chat, so thank you for being willing to give that out. I'm sure you'll get a bunch after this based on all the questions you had. But thanks so much for coming today, Greg. It was really good time
Kylie,
talking to you.
yeah, thank you for moderating and your questions. Thank you to all you who asked questions, and I hope my responses and way of describing things was useful to everyone. And
Yeah.
most importantly, thank you for your service. This country is so blessed to have people like you who have done all that you did, to keep us safe and strong. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Today definitely opened my eyes to consulting. I didn't realize how big it was. So this was really interesting for me. John has one last question before you go.
Just more of an observation. I love all the talk about agriculture, carbon credits, and all that stuff, and yet your LinkedIn has cows on it. It's a great touch. I love it.
Who doesn't like cows?
It's true. The baby cows too, they're so cute.
They're the best. So,
Well, thank you so much for coming today, Greg. It was great talking to you.
thank you so much.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
have a wonderful day.
You
Bye.
too.